You know, there used to be a lot of things that I would consider to be an impossibility, like Robert Pattinson eventually lowering his standards enough to give me a chance, or The Mandalorian becoming a disappointment to me. But being that I've already been proven totally wrong on one of those fronts, Robert, if you're watching, my phone number is... Hi y'all, Snarky J Cosplay here. As of this morning, episode 4 of season 3 of The Mandalorian is streaming on Disney+, and after watching it I can tell you that I've lost most of the faith that I had in this season and in this series in general. I'll go ahead and start off the non-spoiler portion of this review with my rating, which is a 5 out of 10. While this episode does boast some pretty well done action sequences that can be exciting, and they do have little nuggets of character development for some of the major players in this season, this episode is an unfortunate reminder that this is halfway through this season and nothing has happened in terms of an overarching plot. It's been a disjointed mess of random adventures, some interspersed character development, and mostly Grogu merchandise moments. And they're showing us time and time again that they'd rather play dumb instead of actually creating something with a big overarching plot that is worth watching and will actually satisfy at the end. For everyone crying in the comments section of my last video about their world building, get over it. All the world building they did in the last episode didn't matter in this one. Let's see when it actually does become relevant. For all the world building and character development in any given episode, there's a bunch of other dumb stuff that really just seeks to occupy time and fill 30 minutes. With that being said, I remind you that my rating for this episode is a 5 out of 10, so let's get right into the recap. We've got some Easter eggs and some neat stuff happening in this episode, so we're gonna jump right into that. From this point on, there will be spoilers for episode 4 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. You've been warned. We open once again on the Mandalorian covert that we saw in chapter 17 and in chapter 19, and we get some really cool shots of Mando's training, maybe to get better at fighting alligator monsters, because I was very much unimpressed with them in the previous episodes. I've seen better gator wrestling from the guys out in the Everglades. Anyways, our first Easter egg happens right here. One of the Mandos is actually using a really familiar weapon in terms of Fett fanatics. He is using, of course, an EE-3 carbine blaster. It's one of Boba Fett's most iconic weapons. He's been seen carrying one of those for years. This is kind of a quick thing, but I definitely did want to mention it. We see Bo-Katan as she's watching this, and we can definitely tell just looking into that visor that this is all about her as she's slowly starting to come to terms with who exactly this sect of Mandalorians are and what they believe in. Of course, we cut away from any real character development in order to look at Grogu, who's playing with rocks. The rocks turn out to be hermit crabs, so you can expect to see the Funko Pop lining Target shelves of Grogu playing with crabs. Now, honestly, this is one of my major gripes with this season in general. Mando picks up Grogu and takes him over to where the children, like the foundlings, the young Mandalorians, where they're training with each other. And of course, they're like real children, like human kids that are like, you know, 4 foot something or other, and they're wrestling and hitting each other and using play weapons. And Mando takes Grogu over there and says, hey, this guy's a foundling and he needs to be trained like one. And that's my problem, is that they marketed him as a baby. They let us call him Baby Yoda for like a season and a half. He's supposed to be a baby, but now somehow we're supposed to buy that he's gonna wear armor and fight people. Is he a baby or is he a kid? You can't market him as both. The other kid, whose name is Ragnar, underestimates Grogu, and of course we all know how Disney loves an underdog story. When it looks like Grogu is about to lose to the challenger, he does a quick little Yoda in the prequels flip and ends up winning. God, I wish they'd just written this thing out of the show. Anyways, as the kid who just got his ass kicked by Kermit the Gremlin is walking away to lick his wounds, a dragon zooms out of the sky out of nowhere and kidnaps this child. And of course, all the Mandos start freaking out and they chase it down, but apparently they only carry like a quarter tank of gas in those jetpacks. I mean, they all run out of fuel within like 2 minutes. I'm pretty sure I've seen Lay's chip bags with more filling. Anyway, Bo-Katan is the only one smart enough to get in her ship to track this thing's lair down. She comes back with the information of exactly where it is, and they decide to put together a search party in order to go and rescue this young boy from the lair of this dragon thing. Because it's bad enough we don't have an overarching plot that makes any sense in this season, season, so why not throw in another big stupid monster fight that will have no effect on anything? Now, when Bo-Katan returns with this information, we have another Easter egg. She tells them that the spires that they'll have to climb in order to get to the lair are no higher than the peaks of Kairimurut. Of course, this is a reference to Star Wars Legends. Kairimurut was once a Mandalorian stronghold on Mandalore in Star Wars Legends, but of course none of that's canon now, so they just use it to throw to us fans that are desperately hoping that they'll bring Legends back in a meaningful way. Paz Vizsla, Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, and the Armorer try to figure out a strategy in order to best rescue this kid. Despite stealth being necessary, the Armorer suggests that Paz Vizsla, the guy with a chain gun who's like 6'4" and definitely not stealthy, she suggests that he go, but also take the Shriek Hawk training team. There's another Easter egg. The Shriek Hawk is actually one of the symbols of House Vizsla. It's also the icon of the Death Watch, and the Shriek Hawk is also a predatory bird that used to fly in Mandalore before the Great Purge. So you know, when you're being stealthy, take the big guy with the biggest gun and also take half the Death Watch with you, because that's a really smart way to stay quiet. Grogu gets left behind with the Armorer, who takes him into the Forge so that she can start talking to him about what it means to be a Mandalorian. And we get another Easter egg here. As she starts forging something out of Beskar, Grogu finally starts having flashbacks to his past. Of course, this is an Easter egg and a callback to season 1 of The Mandalorian, where we get to see Din Djarin's past every time the Armorer starts banging away at Beskar. So remember that big ol' Order 66 flashback we were all so excited about from the trailers? Well, here we go. We get to see in good old live action the troopers of the 501st Legion starting to take out Jedi as they are being forced to commit Order 66. We have a pretty cool audio Easter egg here. If you listen closely to the sounds of the troopers as they're barking out orders and yelling at each other, it's actually the voice of Tamira Morrison, who of course is reprising his role as the voice of all clones because, well, he's Boba Fett and Jango Fett. Now, some Jedi are trying to lead Grogu out to safety, and they mention that they need to get him to somebody by the name of Kelleran Beck. When an elevator door opens, we are introduced to Kelleran Beck. Jedi Jar Jar confirmed? No, I'm kidding. It's the actor that portrayed him in the prequels, who is named Ahmed Best. And I have to say, it's really nice to see him. After playing such a hated character in the prequels, Best had a really hard time. He apparently even contemplated suicide at one point because of the backlash and the grief that he was given by Star Wars fans. It's a nice enough cameo, so points for that. As Kelleran Beck is taking Grogu out to safety, he ends up on a Nubian yacht, and we get a really cool visual of Coruscant, but also of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant on fire. This is kind of the first time we really get to see the temple like on fire from the sky, which is honestly a really neat sight. As we see their escape into hyperspace, we cut back to present day in the Forge, where Grogu is making those big sad eyes at the camera. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm so annoyed by the lack of plot, I might have been like, oh my god, I need to buy 7 more of these things. But unfortunately, we're beyond that point. This whole time, what she's been forging is another piece of Grogu's armor. He's still wearing that chainmail under his little onesie, so she's made him a rondelle, which looks like it's just kind of a chest plate, and she does adorn it with the Mudhorn signet, which is also on Din Djarin's shoulder pauldron, as they are a clan of 2. Back on the route to the Dragon's Lair, Bo-Katan and the Mandos make camp. And she seems like she's really becoming acclimated to this cult. In the morning, the Mandos all start to scale the mountain as they are going to take down this dragon. And this whole time I'm thinking, like, how exhausting is that? It's hot as out there, presumably. They're wearing 8 tons of armor. I've made like 4 or 5 different Mando kits. I know exactly how much you sweat in one of those. When they get to the raptor's nest, it initially looks empty until Mando points out a heat signature, and Paz Vizsla runs right into the nest and kind of screws up the whole mission because apparently the kid who got kidnapped is his son Ragnar. Naturally, they encounter not 1 but 3 baby raptors, and a huge monster fight develops. So the raptor flies back to the nest, throws up the child, who is definitely gonna need therapy after all this, and then when it sees that it's being attacked by Mandos, picks him back up, and they basically start juggling the kid in the air and like shooting at it, but also trying to catch him. Finally, Mando saves him, says this is the way. The raptor is shot down and immediately consumed by the gator thing we saw in chapter 17, and the Mandos head back to the covert. Bo-Katan is basically hailed as a hero because she's the one that led this search party. She took the the initiative and she rescued a foundling. And then she also brought back the 3 raptor babies who are now also foundlings. I wonder if like anything could be a foundling. I have a wiener dog. I'd like for him to be a foundling. Let me know who I have to talk to arrange that. Bo lost one of her shoulder pauldrons, so the armorer takes her to the forge to make one. We know that Bo has been drinking that Mandalorian cult Kool-Aid real hard because she wants a mythosaur on her pauldron. She and the armorer sort of talk about whether or not she's really seen a mythosaur, and it seems like the armorer doesn't entirely believe that she's seen one, but we obviously know that Bo-Katan did see it because, hey, we were there and we saw it too. And that's kind of how the episode ends. So I will say, I love that we're seeing Bo-Katan start to adopt these Mandalorian practices, but honestly, to me, these little snippets of character development woven into just a bunch of bullshit sort of is just not doing it for me. You cannot base an entire series, you can't base entire 30-minute episodes on like 5 to 6 minutes of actually worthwhile plot development. If the rest of it is filler, the series is just not solid, and that's what I'm getting from this season of The Mandalorian. People will latch onto cameos and fan service and the little snippets of character development we have, but unfortunately, it's not enough for me to give this episode a particularly great rating. Bitch at me all you want, I've built several kits, I love this property, I love Star Wars, and my room is currently covered in Mandalorian posters that I'd rather not have to take down out of shame, which is almost what happened after the book of Boba Fett. Fett is literally my last name. Don't you think that I would want to keep my Mandos in high regard after they threw away my boy's legacy? My rating of 5 out of 10 stands, and that's all from me. I've been Snarky J. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on episode 4 of season 3 of The Mandalorian in the comments below.